What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Quality Talks podcast. It's a little bit warm. I'll tell you what, it's a little bit toasty in this garden office right now. I'm not going to lie. A bit cooler than it has been, but still very, very hot. But we've got an even hotter episode to hit you with today. We're going to be talking about the topic of picking your battles. And delving into sort of how modern quality engineers scale their impact, scale their influence. A lot of what we're seeing right now with AI is challenging the norm. We're seeing a lot of engineers utilizing AI to write code a lot quicker. That's then causing other issues in terms of how do we test this stuff so quickly, all this sort of thing. So it's a really prevalent topic that we're going to be chatting about. And joining me on the show to talk about this is the one, the only, Ben Dowen. How are you doing, Ben?
Hey up, Stu. Yep, Ben Dowen here, checking in. Not, as my background would say, currently in Barcelona, although actually, fun story over the last week, it's been that kind of temperature over here in the UK for sure. It's been melting.
It has. I mean, I was working in this office on Friday, and no word of a lie, I didn't have a thermometer in here, but it must have been well over 40 degrees. And the only reason I was standing in here is because I needed more than one screen. Else I would have been sat in the living room in the dark. So yeah, I don't know whether I need to get air conditioning in here for the 1 week of the year. I don't know, but yeah, it was definitely a little bit toasty. So how have you been coping? You been all right?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot better now that the temperatures are starting to drop.
Yeah.
Today was more like 25 instead of 30, and that's beautiful. I can really manage that kind of temperature very well. Definitely feeling sharper today, having actually managed to get some sleep last night than I have in a few days. So it's good. I'm recharged. I'm ready. I'm ready to pick my battles and get into the meat of the thing.
100%, Ben, 100%. Obviously, Ben, we know each other, and you've been on this show before. It's been almost 2 years. Almost. In a couple of months, I think it's about 2 years since you were last on the show, because we did the Rest Bash episode, didn't we? Which was a really fun episode. But for those that maybe don't know you, Ben, would you like to just introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. So, hi, I'm Ben. You'll have figured that one out by now. I'm a middle-aged white guy with a glorious ginger beard, currently wearing a black top with a bit of a brain that looks a little bit AI attached, and some fetching glasses. A little bit about me and who I am. So I'm widely known in the community as the full snack tester, largely because I like bad puns and love my food, but also because I've been involved in software testing quality now for just a few days under 14 years now. So I've been around a little while. I've worked with many different roles, none of them ever tester, but all of them some kind of quality engineer or test engineer, quality manager. And in my last few roles, including the one I'm in now, I've been a quality engineer at various different levels. And currently I work for a company where I am one of very, very few quality engineers in the organization. We're hopefully growing that number over the next year, but at the moment there is me and one other. So I'm not quite a solo QE, but pretty close, as the other guy we've got, who is excellent, is really embedded in a very different team in a different part of the org, with a little bit of distance. So while I do get to work with him occasionally, I'm definitely working at the moment with multiple teams, which helps bring some context to the way that I'm approaching things at the moment compared to in the past. I've really been embedded directly in teams, or back some 14 years ago, I started out my life at a company where I was in a test team where we were providing test services. And it was a very, very different setup, and it scaled in a very different way. So I've worked in a lot of different modern formats, including going agile. That was a fun time in the industry. And now I guess going AI.
Going agile AI, even, who knows, right? Who knows? But yeah, I think just and we were discussing what we could talk about, Ben, when we we're looking at this episode, and based on your current situation, that's kind of where this topic came from, right? In terms of being the lone or being a smaller number of quality engineers within an organization and having to support multiple teams is very challenging, right? Especially at the pace of what teams want to move at. And I also think that, this is quite, as I said in the intro, this is quite a prevalent topic at the moment with the introduction of AI, which we'll come on to, a little bit later. But also in terms of, where organizations, what I'm seeing is some organizations are reducing the number of QEs. Some of them are scaling their teams, but not scaling their QEs alongside their teams, this kind of thing. So I feel like this is a real prevalent topic for a number of reasons, and I think hopefully we can cover some really, really good and helpful insights for people. We don't have all the answers. We'll put that one out there to start with, right? We're going to throw that out there. But hopefully we can share some stuff that, people will resonate with and potentially be able to go back into their teams and into their organizations and try, and try new things out a little bit as well. And a lot of what we have to do nowadays is experiment, right? So, maybe we'll throw some ideas around how people can experiment and stuff like that. But Ben, just talking about where you're at right now in the role that you're at, you mentioned there that hopefully, over the next year or so, we're going to hopefully scale the number of quality engineers a lot more. But can you just talk about some of the challenges that you're facing or the challenges that it puts you in with regards to when you're having to support multiple teams? What are the things you're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis, just to help bring a little bit of context to the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to put this in a little bit of a longer term context in terms of things I've done before. So I don't want to pretend that I have the golden ball that tells you how the industry has gone over the last 14 years, but I can tell you how my career has developed over the last 14 years. And I can really tell you that previously, I have worked in a very different way. So earlier in my career, I worked very much in a test team, and then going late agile, embedded in an engineering team.
Doing agile.
Yeah. Oh, story poker and everything, mate. Story poker and everything.
Everything. Yeah.
All the things.
Mate, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Fingers in the air in the actual office and everything.
Oh,
cool.
Post-it notes on the walls. Oh.
Yeah, it's great. But anyway, the point was that earlier in my career, I was judged, and I judged myself and how well I was doing based on how much better I can do testing, how many more bugs I can find, how I can better report the detail of the bugs that I found, how I can get better coverage, how I can design better tests to assure quality of systems. And what I didn't realize at the time is that when they talk about the throwing things over the wall and the us versus them, it's not just developers that were responsible for that environment where things were combative and they were us and them. It was also created by having these external test teams and the work we were doing to mark the homework and to make judgment and to make things arbitrarily green or red and pass and fail, right?
Yeah.
And as my career has moved on, I've especially recently, started to try and reduce the number of tests that I ever run that are yes and no, true and false, pass and fail, right? Try to, especially manually, right? So my current philosophy, which is definitely quite the opposite to earlier in my career, is if you know enough to know that there's a definitive yes or no answer, there is a pass or a fail, automate it. Don't even bother trying anything else. Script that bad boy straight away, because that is the kind of check you can just automate, you can move on. If it's got a definitive answer, if you already know what it is, either automate it or test it once. Don't put it in a regression pack. Test it once and move on with your life, and don't let that weigh you down again. Just confirm it works and move on with your life. And I know that sounds risky, but I really do mean that. And then to focus much more of your effort in terms of exploratory testing, in terms of supporting the team on, now I'm going to help you try and build a better product. Now I'm going to try and help you build the product in a way that actually improves the development experience, that actually improves the user experience. Try and support you to build things at the speed that you want to go, right? And this is an entirely flipped mindset, because now I'm not giving answers like, yes, this works, ship it. Now I'm giving answers like, let me try and be a little bit more specific. This user flow works as we intended it to. However, there are these extra things that we could do that would make it really hard for the user to make the wrong choice. And we could put these in, and then we won't have as many support calls. Right? So it's thinking about that extra kind of value add to make the experience better. Or, do you know what? When I went through and I tested this particular flow, it confused me. It did exactly what we said it was going to do, but I think I'd need to be told how to do this, or I wouldn't know to look to do it. There's an icon, there's no text. That's weird. I need to know what it's going to do, right? And like, this is going to be an experience that confuses people. I don't know a better way to do this. Hey, let's see if we can get this into production. Let's see if we can flag this with a feature flag. Let's put this in front of a subset of our users and see if we can get feedback from them so they can give us a better idea. And it actually, they just get on with it, and they have better domain knowledge than me because I'm not the user. Maybe it doesn't confuse them, and maybe we have to do nothing, right? And being able to recognize that, yeah, that was weird for me, but I'm not the user. Let's create an experiment so we can get some feedback, so that instead of blocking things until we know it's good, no, don't block things until it's know it's good. Let's figure out how we can put it in front of the right people so they can make the judgment. Or, hey, let's get the designer involved again. They may have signed off on the designs, but now let's give them a working prototype and they can get their hands on it and decide if they still like it.
Yeah.
And it's a very different conversation from pass and fail. It's an entirely different mindset, because now I'm looking at, how can I help the developers remove foot guns, right? How can I help the developers change the code base and change the CI/CD pipeline and change the way the automated testing runs to make it so that we're not codifying junk, or we're not giving a sense of green for no particular reason, right? We're not doing it just for the sake of it. It has to be meaningful and useful. That was a really long dialogue in one go, and I'm going to take a breath now. But I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea about how the challenges I have now, the way I'm approaching them is entirely the opposite of what I had before. But the absolutely main thing is that I've completely removed the I am going to mock your homework mentality. That's gone. I don't have that anymore. It's not up to me to tell you that your thing is good enough. It is up to me to help you as a developer write your own marking scheme you are happy with, so you can then make that judgment. And it's a very different way of approaching things. And the reason I have to approach things like that is I have absolutely no hope of testing every feature before it goes out. I have no intention of trying, because the scale is so big now of what I'm helping with compared to what's being developed. I've got somewhere between 30 and 40 changes, like 13, 40 PRs that have been merged per week that are going out into production at least. I can't test all of those.
No.
I can't do that on my own. So the developers and other people have to be involved in the testing, and I can help them, like I say, build out that criteria for how they want to do the testing. I can help give them heuristics about the kind of things that they want to test. But I can't make a judgment on my own for each different one and be that gatekeeper. It does not work at this scale.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Ben, in terms of how things have shifted, and just you're coming at it from a point of view where you just physically cannot test everything at that scale, right? But ultimately as well, that mindset shift and that cultural shift is something that we talk about a lot generally, and actually when you're in that position of like, well, I literally cannot physically test all this, that's when you see the real value show up, and where people then start understanding the why do we sort of press for this sort of more modern quality engineering type approach, where actually the developers are taking that responsibility on. But again, it's making sure that they understand how they can do that. So like you say, they're giving them some heuristics or helping them understand that things may not be perfect when they go out. So how can we utilize experimentation? How can we utilize feature flags? The challenge I always find with feature flags is people go, well, we'll just stick it behind the feature flag, whether it works or not. No, we still need to make sure it's functionally working and not broken, but we can experiment with it behind a feature flag, and we can switch it on, and we can target a certain percentage of users or customers or whoever may be using that piece, and then we can gather that feedback. And I think that is a massive shift. I mean, not years gone by, and I'm sure you were part of this as well, where it's kind of like, well, I'm the one doing the testing, right? I'm the only person that can do this testing. You stay away. I'm going to tell you whether it's right or wrong. And it felt powerful. It felt like do you know what I mean? I've got the power here to stop a release. But there was no point to actually that sort of approach, really, when you look at it. Not now. Go on.
It's really interesting the way things have flipped, because at various points in my career, I have been told by very respectable leaders in the quality and testing space that I respect a great deal, that developers can't test. And I know fundamentally two things are true. One, they absolutely can.
Yep.
They absolutely can. Some of them are fantastic at it. Also, I've had to develop a large amount of development skills in order to do the quality engineering I do. So did I suddenly stop learning how to test when I became a developer as well? No, of course I didn't. So it's like, it's nonsense. The developers can't test.
It absolutely is. I mean, I think it's an interesting one where when you hear people saying that fundamentally people can't do something, I'm always a bit like, it's nothing's that binary. I'm sorry. They may not want to, or they may not choose to, but with the right guidance, and they're not stupid people, right? Of course they can test. There's layers to what we do from a testing perspective, and if you look across a team, anybody in the team, developers, product owners, delivery leads, anybody in the team at some point can do some sort of level of testing, right? It's defining how and what and when, and what that looks like, and how that all kind of hooks in together to ultimately paint the picture of what we're trying to gather the information for, which is ultimately, is this good enough? Do we know that this is good enough to go out there into the real world? If we're not 100% sure, what can we do to get more confidence? What can we do to gather more insight? But everybody in the team can contribute to that in some way, right? And I'm in a similar position in my new role at Blue Light Card, right? So we've only recently started expanding the quality engineering team. So we've got a lot of new people that are in the team. and they're still trying to understand the technology, the company, you know, how things work, all this sort of thing. But even once they do, there's still way too many changes coming through to be able to test them all. You know, in the sort of way that we would always have done in the past, right? Really thorough scripts, everything, you know, bang, 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 pass, fail, all this sort of stuff. Those days have gone, and you know, working with the teams now and working with the developers now to try and help them understand, we need you to do this, right? You're capable of doing this, and here's some guidance around how you can do that and where you can do that. I think that's the missing piece. When people say developers can't do it, well, maybe they haven't been given the tools, maybe they haven't been given the guidance, maybe they haven't been given that support that they need to actually be able to develop those skills in the first place.
Yes. And this works really well with my next point, they're sometimes not incentivized to do it, or negatively disincentivized to do it. So often, so developers are problem solvers. They're brilliant game players, right? They understand numbers and games and the way things work, right? They're smart cookies. A lot of them are very smart engineers, right?
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you don't set up the system so that doing testing work is allowed to be a visible part of their job that they get credit for, then of course they're going to want to spend as little time doing it as possible, right? If it's not part of their performance evaluations, if it's not part of doing this part of your job better is going to help you with your promotion, then why would they do it, right? So there's a systematic problem that isn't that developers can't test, it's that the testing part of the job that developers are doing is undervalued by management systematically. And that's why they spend less time learning it, they spend less time doing it, and they ultimately try and do what they can to pass it off to other people, because they feel that that's what they're being told to do systematically. I've seen this time and time again where they absolutely don't want to spend the amount of time they probably should doing it because of these disincentives. However, there is a balance to this. One thing I've also had to let go of, knowing that I can't test everything, is also knowing that everything I would have liked to test, not all of that is now going to suddenly be tested by someone else. The bar for where good enough in terms of how much testing is done has to be redrawn in a way that allows things to continue to happen, code to continue to ship. And it's not because we couldn't do all that testing together as a engineering team, but I'm having to really fundamentally challenge how much is enough, so that we like at what level is it safe and unsafe? What is enough? What is just for show? What is the theater of testing? And what is it that's actually hitting the needle, that's actually improving the quality? Because I don't know about you, but I've spent months sometimes testing releases that were still trash. It doesn't always help doing more testing. No, I know that's controversial, but it does not always help doing more testing. It's not the only thing you need to do to improve quality. And doing the testing alone and finding all the information alone, if it's not acted upon, it's not as useful as it needs to be. If it only focuses on things that are knowable, and things that you've thought about, and we're not the users, it's still not all that useful. If you're only focusing on the did I build things right? So you're familiar, Stu, I hope, and maybe our viewers are as well, of the concept of building things right versus building the right thing. And I'll very 100%. Briefly summarize that as building things right is that the code is maintainable and things are of the quality that we expect in terms of they're maintainable, they meet the specs that, by the way, we've defined as well, they comply perhaps with regulations. The code doesn't have unexpected behaviors based on our expectations as a team, as a company, as a software department, as a designer, as a tester, our expectations. That is important. I don't want to minimize that. But building the right thing is all about making sure the customer can actually achieve their goal. Not your goal as a software company, their goal, because they just need to get through their day and achieve the thing they've paid money for your software to do. And if they don't actually need your software, then you have to try even harder, because you have to make sure the software is valuable enough that they want your software, and that it's friendly and usable enough that they want your software. So you're either fulfilling a need, in which case you better make sure they can do the thing they need, or they're going to get angry at you, or you better make it good enough that it's giving them enough value that they want to use it. And none of that is about building the thing right. It's all about building the right thing. And actually, that's where the accelerated modern software teams that can release changes very quickly really come into their own. That's where the advantage comes in, because if you can change things quickly, you can try things, you can measure them in terms of analytics and feedback in the market, and you can figure out whether you actually are improving or reducing your customer sentiment. And that, you could call that as part of the overall umbrella of testing. But it's definitely different from the traditional let's get the scripts right that I was doing 14 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, the big thing there is that it all spans around understanding, right? So quality for me starts with understanding. We need to understand what is the problem we're trying to solve, right? What is it our customers need, right? Because if we don't know that, we don't know the why, then ultimately we're just going to go ahead and build the thing. And even if we build it in the best possible way, to your point, it's not going to make the foggiest bit of difference if the customer gets it and goes, that isn't even useful to me. I don't even know what that's for, right? But look at how shiny my code is. Look at the amazing tests I ran. They all went green. Our pipeline is nice and shiny. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
How many times have you used an app or an operating system or a website, and they've really proudly gone, oh, we've got a new version, and you start to use it and you go, oh no, it's not the same as it used to be, and now I can't do all the things I used to be able to do. And they're like, yeah, but it's twice as shiny. I'm like, I don't care. I can't do the thing.
I'm gonna call out Argos right now for that. There used to be a really good app that they had for sort of the Argos card that you could get, and it was really easy, really simple. Just did what you needed it to do. It wasn't the prettiest of apps or anything. Don't care, right? Told me how much I owed. Told me when I needed to pay. Amazing, right? Just now they've released a new app for a new company. Whoever's built that doesn't do any of that. It's all nice and shiny though, but it just doesn't do the things I need it to do. And it's kind of like, who actually determined that is what the customers need? And that's what we always have to remember, right? Is we're building this for customers ultimately, whoever they are.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about where I work just for a moment. So where I'm working at the moment is a company called Mimica Automation, and we do a whole load of automation in the process and task mining sector, space, right? And I'm very fortunate to a certain extent in the fact that we have effectively a lot of internal customers as well as our external customers. So in terms of getting feedback, I'm in a very privileged position because some of the features that we build are targeting these internal teams. And actually that's brilliant, because when we were talking earlier about the feature flags, it's great because we can go to a Slack channel full of people and we can go, right, who wants into the testing group?
Yeah.
We can grab 10 of them. We can turn it on just for those 10 people. They can try it out and they can just throw it at us. If it's awful, if it helps them, they can just give it to us because it's absolutely fine. It's internal. They can give us all that detail. And that makes my life a lot easier. So when we're doing features that are internal facing, if you ever have the privilege of being able to work in an environment where that's true, make use of it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that all comes back to making the most of, well, firstly, having the feedback loops in place throughout your system and your life cycle of delivery and development, right? But then actually, like you say, making use of them, right? So, and actually listening to what's coming back and utilizing that information. And I think that's the thing. It's like often we'll ship something out and you don't hear anything. You don't know whether we delivered the right thing. We don't know, you know, did we hit the targets? You just don't know. You move on to the next thing. So I think, you know, for me, coming back to that point around understanding, that really for me is what our focus should always be to start anything, is like we all need to be aligned on what it is we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. And then we can decide how we're going to do that. And I often feel that there's a disconnect, and that's one thing that I'm working, you know, in my new role is driving that sort of reality of like, we need to connect more collectively on the why. Why are we doing these things? Why do we need this by this date? Why? And it helps the teams understand, right? And then we can determine how we go about doing something, what the level of quality needs to be or can be or should be. And you can have some options around that, right? And say, well, we could ship it in to this level of quality. Is that okay? And then we talk, you know, collectively and around that. So we're going through that sort of cultural shift a little bit at the moment, you know, and sort of trying to get people to think a little bit more around helping the teams understand the why behind things more, so that they can make better decisions. And then when we're sort of in this position where we're talking, coming back to your point earlier around, you know, enabling your developers, and I'm going to use the word enabling because that's what we should be doing from a quality engineering perspective, enabling our developers to be comfortable and be able to do some testing and, you know, support that throughout that life cycle is then, you know, all connects in. So yeah, I think it's really interesting sort of where we started to where sort of the world is now, and then you package it up into your space where you're like not the lone, but you're one of two quality engineers. It sort of really sort of like exacerbates it, and it kind of like really brings it to the surface of like, we have to live and breathe this, people, else this isn't going to work.
Well, and let's go back to picking our battles. I think this is a great time to bring that in. So one thing that I'm learning for sure, being one of few, okay, and especially because I'm working across multiple teams, is that I need to find different ways to pick the work that I'm doing at any given time, because I can't do it all. There is no way, like there is simply more work that could be done than I could possibly do in any given week. So I have to kind of choose what it is I get involved in. And part of what I do is, and I'm not pretending I'm getting this right at any given time. And actually, I'm always working on finding better ways to pick my battles better. But what I like to do is, even though there are a whole load of teams and I'm working across them, is so to start with, I kind of pick one team for that quarter where I embed a bit more deeply and I get involved. So I can't possibly join all teams' ceremonies. Okay. So I choose one team that I'm going to all their ceremonies. I'm getting involved in all their projects. I'm helping make sure their test plans are written, not necessarily doing the testing for the features, but making sure they've got test plans written where I'm helping them ask questions. These are, for anyone panicking, these are very lightweight test plans with a few headers based on the one-page test plan. These are not heavyweight lots of we shall do all the scripts. They're literally just, we're going to include this, we're not going to include that. Here's 1 or 2 testing charters. It's not a big deal. But what it is a moment for me to have a chat with the team or with the project team. What is most important? What do you absolutely need to make sure it works? What are you worried about? Which parts of it do you think that scare you a little bit? That you think that even though you're going to do your best to try and get them to work, there might be reasons that they're not going to work the way you expect. So we're going to need to do a bit of extra testing. Like just to have those risk-based conversations with. So I'm doing that kind of rotational stuff. I'm also, one thing I have been doing for the past year, and I'm now trying to work my way out of, is I'm primarily running the weekly releases. So I'm mostly cutting the current version of the software, collecting the release notes, and then offering for the product team to review them and the development teams to review them. I'm doing the release testing. Both there's some that's automated, there's some that isn't, and then I'm kind of helping make that release decision and then putting that live and then checking that everything deployed okay. So I'm really hand holding the release most of the, not all the time, but most of the time. And now that I've been doing that for a year, my main focus now is to take myself away from doing that, to stop there being releases are a Ben thing culture, and to make sure that this is already making progress. There are some of the developers, I mean, they were doing releases before I joined. There are some of the developers who've joined since I've joined, and I've trained them up on doing releases. They do release when I'm not around. It's not it's not a critical problem. They do release when I'm not around, but not every time. There have been times where I've not been around where they've chosen not to release, but most of the time when I'm not around, they do still release it. With the odd exception, they mostly do release when I'm not around, which is great. But at the moment, the releases take up too much of my time, and it takes up so much time that it's off-putting for the developers, right? So my main focus at the moment is really on, and I'm working with the developers. I'm not actually doing all this kind of work on my own, but the main thing I'm doing at the moment is working on which parts of the thing can we automate to make this safer and to make this a less of an event and less of an effort, so that anyone in the team can choose to do a release, and it's like it's fine, doesn't matter, right? Like it's no big deal. I want to make it less of an event, less of a big deal, as for anyone, not just like necessarily casually, that's not quite what I mean, but that anyone who needs to do a release can do a release without it being a big deal. So it's like, that's the battle that I'm taking on at the moment. And it's really interesting because we're finding loads of things along the way, me and my team, on when we really comes down to it, things we need to do and we need to tidy up and put in place to allow things to be automated. And that's a really great process we're going through, because there's so many things that doing things by hand you can just account for casually, right? You can just adjust and do whatever. But when you actually break it down into steps and you try and automate as much as you can, it's a great thing to go through, because it helps you make challenge assumptions and go, okay, is this the same every time, or are you making some kind of decision point here? Is that a decision point we can make into that we can codify? Do we have enough information to feed in so that decision can be made, or do we still have to defer to a person to press a button? And that, it's a very fascinating process. I'm really enjoying going through and helping the team reduce as much as possible the need for manual intervention. Some of which has involved us using more AI. For example, I'm definitely using AI to help me with the first draft of the release notes now, which is working great. They often need small edits, but they're mostly perfectly good with only minor adjustments needed. And that saves me loads of time.
I think that I just wanted to I'll get into AI specifically in a moment, but I just wanted to a couple of things to go as you were talking there. How you kind of prioritize around, well, this quarter I'm going to focus on X team, right? I'm going to embed more into this team. Even within a single team, how do you manage sort of the context switching? Is there a lot of context switching that you're having to do? How do you kind of deal with that in terms of knowing when and how, where and how to kind of, you know what I mean?
I do know exactly what you mean. And I mean, I'm very lucky that for the most part, I have very experienced and independent developers who I can either be responsive when they ask me to help them out with certain things because they have identified a bit of something they want a bit of a hand with, or if I have time and capacity, I can jump in and go, I know that. So the developers are working on different projects, right? And I really, that some of the projects are higher profile or higher risk. And those are the projects I am offering my time to and deliberately spending more time to. And some of that I'm choosing because I've made those determinations. Some of it I'm working with the engineering manager, right? I'm saying, hey, which are the more risky, more like higher profile projects that you'd like me to be focusing on to give my time, right? I'm not doing all of this on my own out of nowhere. I'm using the management that's there from the engineering management point of view and saying, I can get involved in a few things. Let's agree together which ones I'm getting involved with. And some of those are in the team I'm embedded with, and some of those are cross-team projects because there's no one else to get involved in them, but because they're cross-team projects, they're reasonably high company priorities. I'm getting involved in those because nobody else will, because there is another quality engineer, and if I can help, I will help with those. But I'm, again, it's about picking and choosing not just the things I get involved in, but how much I am involved. So, for example, am I helping organize some testing sessions? And what I'm trying to do is facilitate testing sessions, but get other people from the project teams involved. So I'm not the only one who's looking at the thing that's deployed, who's carrying out the actions, who's looking at the test notes. And I'm getting support from them to do the testing, and we're doing it together. But it also gives me that opportunity to do some coaching as I go along, because once I've done this with you a few times, I expect you to go off and do this without me next time, right? So it gives me those opportunities to work with different engineers a bit at a time and do the whole, first I'll show you, then I'll sit with you while you do it, then I expect you to go and give it a go and come and ask me only if you have problems, right? And that kind of level of doing the coaching and working with people. And I'm always happy to jump in and help where I can. But you asked a very specific question about context switching. The answer is, there's loads of it. And one of the reasons I'm working on, and I apologize, I have no open job specs open to open the floodgates to share as of today. So don't come running at me yet. But it's simply that there are teams I know who want help, who aren't the team I'm currently working with, who I know would benefit from someone full-time, right? So in terms of how do you scale, I know it's a controversial thing, right? So I've worked with various different leaders in the past and spoken to various different leaders in the past that have very different opinions, right? You have those ones who think and live that there should be 0 to 1 quality engineers in an organization, and that really the teams need to do quality engineering as a process, as an approach to the way they do engineering. And there are the opposite, which is, well, really every team should have at least 1 quality engineer in, and that should be part of the way a team is made up. I understand that both can work. But I think it all really comes down to scale and maturity, right? We're growing quite rapidly as a company, and teams are being formed, and I think some of them are excellent at what they're doing. But the people that are in those teams, some of them have less people in the teams that have that quality background, whereas others have, like, developers or product managers who have previously worked as being testers, right? And they need me less because they know what they're doing already. And that doesn't mean the other teams don't know what they're doing, but they would gladly take the help if it's there. And this is the thing I'm really super happy with the teams that I'm working with, is that as I'm starting to open up the opportunities, like, hey, if we could get another quality engineer in, would you have work for them to do? They're like, yes, please. When can they start? So I've clearly done a good enough work over the So I've clearly done a good enough job setting the groundwork over the last year that having QEs around is something they're now comfortable with, that they're now happy with the idea of having the help. So now I get the opportunity to try and bring a few more in, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's great to hear, and I think it can be a long road to go down, right? And kind of, I hate to say it, but prove the value of what the role does, essentially. But also, I think, like, you touched on maturity, and I think that's a really important thing, right? There's no cookie cutter for anything that we do, right?
Yeah.
So you could say, oh, well, I've worked in a team where it's 4 engineers to 1 quality engineer, and that's been perfect. Okay, yeah, maybe in that space, but maybe in another space it needs to be more. Maybe it needs to be less. It's all about context and levels of maturity and what you're trying to achieve as within your organization, right? And that for me always comes back to what is our vision from a technology perspective, i.e., how do we want to deliver software, right? Or even better, how do we want to deliver products to our customers, right? So I think it's I've always got that level of mindset around not going into anywhere in particular and going, this is how you need to do it. Actually, no, here's some ideas, here's some sort of, it's like a menu, right? I'm going to go into a restaurant, I might have this time and that this time and this. Oh, no, am I going to do it a little bit differently? Because that's what matters. So understanding the level of maturity, understanding the people that we've got, where their mindset is, right? Some people are really keen and really strong advocates of wanting to get involved and do that sort of thing. Others take a little bit more time to kind of get on board and understand and see the value and stuff like that. So I think what you said there is really cool, in the sense of, now you're starting to see the benefits of that work that you've been doing, in terms of, okay, yeah, maybe we need to invest in a few more of these people, right? A few more of these roles to help supplement our teams and enable our teams, not just do some testing, right? And I think that's the key thing.
And I'm trying really hard to make sure as well that I'm working with teams to understand what they're expecting, but basically to set the job spec right, set the expectations right. And I've given some hard truth to some teams where they've been like, do you know what? We'd really love a tester to do more of our testing. And I'm like, cool, don't do that. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, don't do that. If you just want to build more automation, build more automation. If you just want more testing to happen, do more testing. If you want to level up your team and change things, then bring in a quality engineer. But I was like, I like trying to get that message across that quality engineers are change agents. Ultimately, we are here to support you on a journey from where you are now to a point where you need us less. Hopefully not at all. And that's a really weird thing to say, because it's not about doing yourself out of a job. It's about levels of it. Because actually, it's not that you don't need us at all or that you can't use us at all. It's more like, hey, here's level 1. level 1 is making sure that each feature that we put out into production doesn't cause an incident. That's it. It doesn't matter how well it's received. It doesn't matter how easy it is to maintain. Level 1 is just the work we put out into production causes few incidents or no incidents, right? And it might take a while to get a team to a point where they're very confident that they can do level 1 without any help from any quality professional, right? So you get them there first. So when I talk about maturity, like that's level 1. But it doesn't mean that the job's over once you've got that team to level 1, because once they're there and that stuff's done, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You can start layering things up to help them level up again and again and again. So it goes round in a cycle. And you do want to do yourself out of a job, but only so you can do the next job. And the next job is more important. And then you can do it again. And that might be you move to a different team and you help them get to level 1, or it might be that you help that team get to level 2. The levels and what's in them are going to be different from every different team and company you work at. I'm not going to start trying to describe every different level of maturity. I'm not building a maturity model. I'm not promoting a maturity model. There are loads of them out there. But I'm just trying to give an idea of this is what I mean by maturity. It's like, let's get to a point where the team are comfortable with that good enough. Then you can help them get to the next level.
Yeah, and that's all around scaling through enablement, right? So, and you talk about maturity model. There are a number of different approaches to maturity models and things like that. The key thing for me is that with the maturity models, the most valuable thing of a maturity model is it gives you a staged approach to go after. Right, so you're not trying to go from here to here, and anybody that can't see me, I've got one hand to the left and one hand to the right, a long way away apart. You've actually got incremental improvements you can make to take you on that journey, and you can do that through a number of different things. Right, you can do that purely focusing on automation. You can do that holistically across quality. So you can have maturity models within maturity models. That gets very complex, but it just is a great way to just help teams understand this is your first target. This is what we're trying to achieve now, right? And this is the value we get from that. That's the outcome that we're trying to achieve, right? And I like the fact that in the example you gave, we just want to make sure that our features don't cause an incident. Cool. That's kind of coming back to the building it the right way, right? So that we don't cause an incident, not necessarily building the right thing. And then the kind of next level is, but let's do that and now build the right thing as well, and you can almost feel it forming as from what we've already talked about. And I think that's, as I say, I'm a big fan of sort of having maturity models that help guide. They're not there to crack a whip. They're not there to, create this really sort of this governance type approach. No, they're there to actually guide improvement, and that's how I see maturity models.
Absolutely. And we spoke about earlier feedback loops, right? So 100%. One of the things that I'm working on is trying to figure out what automated DORA dashboards, DORA stuff. I'm not going to go into a massive discussion about DORA because that could take us another hour. Easy. 100%. But my point is...
we'll get you back on, Ben, and we can talk about it then.
Absolutely. Perhaps once we've built it, and then I can give you something useful to take away. But effectively, the primary concept, and I big shout out to Jit Gosai and the stuff around DORA that he's put out there, and the stuff on quality engineering he's put out there around speed and quality and having both, right? So some of this is all based on that stuff is fantastic. And I've shared that talk widely within my teams, and I work on trying to get people to watch that stuff. It's awesome. But the idea of having throughput and stability basically as your two kind of core metrics. But I've also been very careful as we're trying to build out these dashboards and we'll get onto AI in a moment because I want to get there. But building prototypes for these dashboards, and one of the things that I've been really trying to figure out as my guiding principle is we need to build this in a way that it's got enough detail and it's useful enough so that the teams can make decisions on how they want to change things and so that they can run experiments to improve. But they mustn't be written in a way that can identify individual developers and give them a hard time because of the things that they have done to influence the system, right? It's too easy to build these things and go look like, oh, look, this person has made a whole load of changes that have caused instability. No, that person just happens to be one of the people that contributes to one of the hardest parts of the code. This person just happens to be putting a lot of changes out there because they're working really hard, or they've been put on these particular projects and they've hit a lot of the foot guns we left for them before. Like, this must not be a tool for other people to bring external judgment. We can only build it as a useful feedback tool if it's for us as a team to grow. And that's
100%.
That's a really interesting thing with all of these maturity models and the metrics and the dashboards and stuff. It's how do you get that cultural conversation right so that we can grow and we can use them to self-reflect, but they're not used to judge us and beat us up. Or for us to beat ourselves up.
Yeah, I mean, they're there for us to hold ourselves and each other accountable. That's, but not to be beat up over. And that's kind of the way I look at it, right? I'm a massive, I miss the days of being in the office and having dashboards on the walls and, do you know what I mean? Just having them there and you don't have to go and look for them, or you don't have to have them on a separate screen or just there. Yeah. And I'm trying to encourage, let's say, we've got lovely wall space in the blue light card office at the moment that's just empty. I'm like, let's get some nice dashboards up, right? But yeah, so I think that's really important. And I think the other thing there, coming back to feedback loops, is for me one of often when we talk about automation, people jump in and say, "Oh, test automation, right? Let's automate tests, or let's automate checks, right? Whatever we want to talk about." What I'm trying to encourage is let's automate feedback loops, right?
Ooh,
so
nice.
Let's look at where we can automate feedback loops that are valuable to us. So if you look through our SDLC and go, okay, so what opportunities do we have for feedback loops through the SDLC at different times? What ones are we using now? What ones do we have? What then can we automate? What can we visualize? And kind of bringing that sort of thing to life, rather than it being, when we talk automation, it's, we're going to automate a deployment, we're going to automate a test. Actually, think of it as a way of automating a feedback loop. So if we automate a deployment, that gives us feedback sooner, right? And if we automate our test, that gives us feedback sooner. So rather than going, I've automated the test, it's saying we've actually now got some feedback that is, fast and reliable because we automated. That's how I try and encourage people to think about things, and that becomes a much more valuable conversation in my mind then, rather than it just being very binary of like, we're going to automate this thing and we're going to automate that thing. It's like, but why are we automating? What is the outcome we're trying to achieve by automating that?
Yes, there's a great line that our friend Vernon Richards often says, which is, so what?
Yeah, so what? Yeah, exactly.
And I love that, right? So I do often use this when we're talking about stuff. I go, so what? Like, what are you going to do if there's a failing test? What are you going to do if you get this feedback? Is it going to be actioned? What is this actually going to be a high priority thing? Or is this just going to be more noise?
Exactly.
Like, will you care if this fails? And it's really surprising when you actually go down to it, the things people won't care about. And that can really tell you something. And there's the other way around as well with automation, of course, which is what part of our software development process can we automate so that we can't get it wrong. Right.
Mm.
So sometimes it's about the checks and the feedback loop. Sometimes it's about the tests and the checks. Sometimes it's just things like, I don't know, well, can we automate versioning so nobody can manually version the thing wrong ever again? Right. Or, whatever the thing is, look for those things that people spend time on, all those things that are going wrong.
Yeah.
And if people aren't spending time on it and they're mostly going right, automate something else. That bit's fine. Leave it alone.
Yeah, just don't do it, please.
Don't do it. Just leave it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, Vern always gets a shout out on this show. Love it.
I had to get it in there somewhere.
100%. Yeah, no, absolutely, man, absolutely. So let's look. We've teased AI throughout this entire conversation. We've kind of put the carrot out there, pulled it back. Let's talk AI then. In your world right now, you've touched on you're utilizing AI. First of all, I'm interested in how your engineers are utilizing it, and has that what additional or new challenges has that maybe presented you with in the context of what we're talking about right now? But then I'm also interested to understand how maybe you've been using it.
Absolutely. And this is the point where I guess I have to be somewhat careful, because I am here talking to you as a professional quality engineer, but not representing the point of view of my company or my engineering department. But what I would say is my company is Mimica Automation, right? We are Mimica.ai. We are building products that are very open on the tin, have AI built in.
Yeah.
And I have engineers who are good at using AI assisted tools and are leveling up very quick to be very good at using them.
Yeah.
And I have noticed a significant challenge over the last kind of 3 to 6 months, where as those tools have got better and as we as an engineering department have got better at using them, we're producing changes very quickly, which is excellent for all sorts of reasons, but it does present new challenges from a quality engineering point of view, because all those changes we make on a regular basis that I couldn't possibly test all of before, well, now I've got no chance.
Now we've just
the rate of change. It's very hard to actually tell how much of the rate of change that has increased within my context purely because of the adoption of AI versus simply adding in extra engineers, because we are growing, right? So I don't have a lot of stable data where month on month we have the same work to be done, we have the same number of engineers, and then we can only map tool adoption. So I can't actually guarantee all of that has come from AI. But what I can say is there's a lot going on, and they're doing it pretty quick. But it also has helped us in so many ways, because we can get really great clues for debugging and for incident response and for just figuring out things in the system. So one of the really beautiful things from an engineering point of view is now when people ask questions, we can probably get you a pretty reasonable answer to that question in like 20 minutes instead of a few days. And that's bananas, right? It used to be you had to have previous domain knowledge, or you had to read the code by hand, and then maybe you had to do a little bit of trying it out and deploying it to environment to see whether it really did the thing you think it does. And then you'd be able to turn around and go, yeah, we're 90% sure it does this. By which point they've moved on and they don't care. They've asked you the question, but now they don't care anymore. And, they've moved on. Whereas now we can have people asking questions internally about, oh, how does this work? And we can have automated bots answering, interrogating the code base and giving a, pretty reasonable answer so quickly that means that the developer only has to go and double check. Maybe they're wrong, but it gives a starting point so blooming quickly. That's cool. And there are things I've been able to do from a quality engineering point of view that a year ago when I started, there were things that just wound me up from a quality point of view. There's a really silly one, and it makes no difference from a quality point of view to a certain extent, right? And that is, in our build system, the way we embed the version of the software into the thing, which isn't even publicly visible. For the first build of any build, you got a GitHub commit hash, and then if you released hotfixes, they had the correct build number. Yeah, and that really wound me up. This is wrong.
I can see why.
Yeah, and it's and I understood why, and I understood that it didn't quite work right. And a year ago, when I first joined, I was still discovering the use of AI tools. I'd done a bit, but I would consider myself to have been a relative newcomer to the whole thing. Now I've been given the support. I've learned from my other developers. I've got the licenses because work are paying for this stuff because, like I say, they're very AI positive, which is really an advantage for me. Now I was just able to explain the problem to Claude Code, explain roughly what I wanted to do about it, get it to write me the plan. I disagreed with it. I told it to do it slightly differently. And then I hit go. And the same day, I've got a PR open for the rest of my team to review, for them to give me feedback on whether this is a good idea. And we've got the thing, and that's it. By the next version, it should all be fine. And it allows me to do things like pull the environment to see whether the version's been deployed. So I can make a script to say, is it healthy? Oh, wait, it doesn't matter. That's too much detail.
Yeah.
But the point is, I can go in and make fixes. Doesn't just have to be test fixes. Doesn't just have to be test automation. I can help contribute to quality fixes in a way that I have done in the past, especially with small string changes. But now I've got an opportunity to really get involved and actually help make the product better, to just change a few things that, from a quality point of view, make it easier to maintain or make it behave slightly better. I'm not doing full-time developer work. That's not where I'm needed. There's one of me. There's a whole load of them. They're great at it. But rather than spend time raising bugs to fix these minor things, I'm now able to get in and just help and just do it.
Yeah.
That's freaking cool, man.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And I think it's a very similar place to where we are, actually. So, in terms of the adoption of AI into the business as a whole, not just into engineering, and obviously wanting to utilize that and such like. And I think the interesting thing I'm seeing there is that some people embrace it really, really quickly, are very confident, this, that, and the other. Others take a little bit more time, but it's really cool to start seeing people going, I've just done this really cool thing. I never knew I could do this, right? And I think that's sort of like, that's maturity level, comfort zone, getting people to try new things, embrace it. And that's as much as I can ask people to do, right? Embrace it, right? We're going to learn this together because it's new for everybody. Some people are going to naturally, adopt it because just by the nature of what they do and who they are and the skills that they already have. Other people will take a little bit more time. But obviously we're seeing a similar thing in terms of, our software engineers are, really sort of wrap their arms around it, and they're able to churn the code out quicker, which means there's a lot more change. But then coming back to what we were saying earlier about then embedding this approach of quality engineering, where they then also can test some of that change becomes even more prevalent, right, and more important. And then utilizing it in other ways as well. I mean, I'm, coming back to what we were saying about having the dashboards there and utilizing, again, AI is great at sort of finding that information and then surfacing it up. Might not get it right first time, but it gives you visibility of things quite quickly, to start at least, playing around with. So yeah, and I think that that's the thing for me. It's scary for people, in terms of the speed of change, and every week something seems to move forward faster, and it's like I haven't even learned that bit yet, and now we're here. And I think the key thing there from is maintainability. Like coming back to what we were saying earlier, right? Stability and maintainability, right? How do we maintain the good, strong, positive quality engineering practices whilst embedding AI in a way that obviously we know is going to scale quickly, speed up deliveries per se, and I think that's the challenge that we're going to be facing more into as we keep moving forward. But if we can keep coming at this from a people perspective, so a lot of what we've talked about today is about people and enabling people to be able to do these things, then I feel like that's still the right angle to be focusing on. I don't know about what you think.
Okay, so a few different things. Let's break this down. First of all, let me blow your mind. Okay.
Go on.
For me, the thing that I'm really observing with the adoption of AI tools is the commoditization of technology. And the reason I mean that, and I'll explain what I mean, is all these things that people are now doing that they weren't doing before, they already could have done. 100%. All of these things, none of them are things that they couldn't do. And by that, I don't mean that they already knew how to do them, or they already had the skill how to do them. I mean, there's literally nothing that was blocking them from just doing these things, from just automating these things, from, like, AI isn't doing anything magic. But what it is doing is it's making these things that were people wouldn't necessarily think to try and do, or they would take more time to figure out, and they would potentially just opt out of trying to do these things because they either wouldn't think to do it, or they wouldn't prioritize learning to do it. They wouldn't prioritize putting the investment in, right? And they were probably perfectly capable. This is not about making people who aren't capable more capable. It's about making people who are capable from a domain technology point of view get access to how to use tools in a way that really brings that barrier down. It's about reducing that barrier to entry. Some of that's perceived, some of that is genuine. I didn't know I could do this thing. Now I can do this thing, and that's freaking cool, right? So it's really interesting how it's bringing that in, and I really hope that it continues to do that. But I also hope that there's a trend where once people learn that they can do these things and they've got AI to help them do it a few times, that they also figure out ways to maintain that momentum of using the tools in this way without only going back to AI to do it again.
Yeah.
Right? That's where we're really going to get the victory, is where, okay, I got AI to give me this starting point. But there's different ways of doing this. One is you give everything over to the vibes and you just go back to AI to do all the things. And the other is where you get AI to help you reduce that barrier to entry, but then you take that inspiration and you run with it. And you might use AI again, but you don't only give over to the AI, you learn the thing, you carry on with it. I've seen engineers do that very well. I really hope that is also encouraged for everyone else.
Yeah.
That bit is cool. I'm sure I had another point, but I think I've lost it.
Well, look, I think there's so much. So for me, there's so much we don't know about AI in terms of what the potential could be moving forward. But also it comes with risks, right? And I just want to pick up on what you said there. Becomes a risk that people just become too dependent on it and too reliant on it, and they're not really thinking how they probably should be thinking for themselves. And obviously Claude went down the other day, right? Claude went to sleep, right? It was just like it decided it wasn't going to play for a few hours. And it's really interesting.
Not got many nines. Claude's not got many nines.
No, exactly.
It's not really close to one, actually.
But it's interesting, right? Because that really sort of surfaces like how do we respond now, right? It's like I mean, it was literally as I was doing something, it decided it wasn't gonna be happy, and I was like, oh, okay, back to the drawing board. I'll just do it a different way. It just took me longer, but yeah, it's kind of like, do you just down tools and go, I'm not doing anything until Claude comes back?
There's an XKCD for that.
Yeah.
So there was an XKCD, a classic XKCD of people on office chairs having a battle with like wooden swords, and it was like basically, oh, it's okay, we're waiting for the code to compile. And now the modern version is we're waiting for Claude to process, right?
Yeah,
that's like
exactly.
or whatever the modern thing is. I remember the other thing I was going to say, and that is, you were talking about embedding those quality engineering principles. One thing I'm really learning, which is very interesting, is that all the conversations I used to have with teams about team norms, team behaviors, team rules, right? Things that we decided that these were going to be our ways of working.
Yeah.
It used to be we'd write them down on a shared page, whatever tool it was we used. We'd tell people about them maybe when they joined the team. We'd occasionally remind ourselves of them and update them. And we'd encode them on a people level. Maybe we spent time enforcing them, maybe we didn't. Maybe people moaned when other people didn't do it. Now that all goes in Claude.md or whatever the equivalent agents.md file is that you use. And now we have to be a lot more exact in the way we codify things, because 100%. Now we're codifying it directly into the tools that we're using to write the code.
Yep.
Doesn't always listen to them, nor did we listen to them always before. But it's great because actually those things that used to be a battle because the team potentially didn't want to really care about, I don't know, writing a definition of done. Now, all of a sudden, when all you have to do is use superpowers skill and you have to tell Claude to make sure it gets its code coverage level right, well, that's fine because it's going to go write the freaking unit tests. So now I'm getting now we're increasing our code coverage from a unit test and integration test point of view, because I've worked with the team to tell Claude that it has to write them. So I've gone, look, if you're going to write, this is the one thing I said is, look, if you're going to write so much code with Claude, fill your boots, but can you please spend some tokens on the tests as well?
Oh, yeah, exactly, right.
And it's great, actually. It's fantastic.
Exactly.
So now I don't have to tell people that they have to have tests in their PR. I just have to tell Claude that it has to have tests in its PR. We have to be a little bit more subtle in that because they have to be useful tests and you still have to review them. It's not a golden bullet or whatever, but it's great. It's still good. It's a very helpful thing.
Yeah. And I find that really... I find it really interesting because ultimately it comes back down to perceived value in doing anything, right? It's like people weren't concerned about a definition of done before because maybe they didn't see the value in it. Now there's a value in it because ultimately by doing that, then they get this other benefit out of the back of it, right? So yeah.
And maybe it wasn't valuable to them before, and maybe it is now. And I think, again, this comes back to what I was saying before, which is one of the things I'm having to do, as well as pick my battles, is really challenge myself and question what is needed and what is nice to have. What is something I used to put value in and I used to think was necessary that actually maybe wasn't ever as important as I thought it was. Or maybe it was really important for the medical device company I was working for, but it's less important for the process mining company I'm working for. Or, you know, you've got different contexts, and it's about kind of letting go of things just because it's the way I used to do it, and figuring out what is the right thing for this team and for this product now. And how do we leave room for experiments, and how do we leave room to make sure things aren't too rigid?
This has been really, really cool, Ben, to get your insights and understand, you know, the journey that you're going through at the moment and how you've kind of tackled that. Before we close off, I just want to hand over to you for sort of maybe a final thought or one piece of advice that you would give QEs that maybe are navigating this sort of landscape at the moment, to take away.
Absolutely. I think the biggest takeaway for me, if you take anything away from all of this, is be self-reflective. And I would really encourage people to think how they can work with their engineering teams to deliver better software and move away from working by themselves to produce better testing. Testing is a great tool, but it is not the only tool you have. And to really embrace modern quality engineering, you need to ask why and so what, and you need to understand what winning means at a company level and a team level and at an engineering level for your product, not for your test suite.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end the show, Ben. Again, thank you so much for coming on. I think the conversation that we've had today, I think, you know, will resonate with so many people, and I think the examples you've given are so valuable as well, Ben. In terms of, you know, what you've been going through, how you've approached it, your mindset, that shift that you've taken over that time as well. And yeah, I think I'm hoping that people take some value away from the conversation that we've had, because there's a lot of real good nuggets in there. But remember, people, also, it's like, as we said at the start, we don't have the answers to all the questions. We have experience. We have experience within our own environments, right, Ben? And what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But hopefully you can take something away and apply it into the landscape that you're currently working in right now, and develop your own approach, utilizing some of the things that we've been talking about. But again, thank you so much, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed this episode. We've got more coming. They're going to be coming thick and fast again, with guests being lined up. So yeah, get ready for what's to come. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. And join us next time on another episode of Quality Talks podcast. Take care for now.